thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. And we know you're a busy guy, and so very much appreciate you bestowing your wisdom on us here this morning. How are you?
I'm good, George. Anytime I get a chance to, chat, whether it's recorded or not, we some magic happens, So always can use some magic myself. So it's honored to be on here. Seriously, good times.
Absolutely. Well, brother, why don't you take a quick second to just kind of introduce yourself and
Sure.
tell us a little bit about your career background?
Yeah, I'm Guirae Jang. I oversee our consulting practice here at RevShoppe. So a little bit leading up to RevShoppe, the last 5 6 years, I spent my time, in SaaS, from ed tech to cybersecurity to marketing technology, in the top of funnel sales development world, right? From starting off as a rep to in the last couple of years building SDR teams and really scrappy teams from scratch, really energized and passionate about that space. And as I've been really growing in that space, something that always has been so true to me. I have a mentor named Jim Reagan. He's formerly at MRP. He really is the first one who taught me about the buyer journey, right? So even when I was at SDR making cold calls, it was less about at that time, hindsight's 2020, right? At that time, just calling to make a couple of dollars here and there, but he really taught me that the buyer journey is so crucial, right? When you understand how prospects respond, how your ICP says certain things, the language that they use, and to understand the different stages of how they're ready to buy versus why are you calling me? Just that general concept really shaped the way that I viewed the world. And just fast forward to, where I am today. At RevShoppe, we really help shape the sales execution or sales engagement strategy for big enterprise companies, right? So we really help them to, optimize at the way that their, not only top of funnel teams, but even AE and AM and CS teams go about their workflow and go about really, really being efficient, right? At the end of the day. So it's been quite a journey. And so a lot of people will ask me like, hey, you got a little taste of this, little taste of that. And to me, it's less about justifying it. And it's really not about like, I had this like master plan, but to me, it's been this like thread, this journey of like, how do we best engage our clients? And I think at first it started with like, hey, you gotta like, dig into the pain in the simple sense of the term and then talk. And then that kind of like binary sense of that dig into the pain became more robust and began to really delve into ideas of not just top of funnel, but like what happens in post sale, what really happens, in the context of client success. Right. And so, leading up to this journey, really getting now this full coming from top of funnel pre-sales and just being maniacally obsessed in that world. Now I really get a chance here, leading the consulting teams here at RevShoppe and also seeing our clients understanding really what it means to drive, impact and success, for our clients. So a little bit of background on myself and kind of like what gets my gears turning.
Well, I'd argue that, success is the key to actually having a successful organization, hence the word, right? That customer success, just because, you could do a lot of top of the funnel stuff. You could even be really good at net new sales, but we've all seen that is not really, I mean, look, not that it's not a key to success. It's also super important, but I think that retention and then that growth moving forward is the key to, I think, sustained growth, but also it's a great validator of your value as an organization, as a product. Absolutely. Right? Like we've all been there where like, oh, you're really good at like, being able to convince someone to build or to buy, I should say, the product early on, but then it's then they churn, right? Especially if it's an MRR kind of business. I know that's not what we're talking about here. You really focus on enterprise. And I think a lot of organizations still want to do ARR stuff, right? Yeah. But then, 12 months in, you have this churn because you never really focused on success. So that's super cool.
Yeah, success is like, I think and this is more speaking about myself than the market and my peers. Like, I think CS, big. I'm reading Nick Mehta's book right now, around his second one that came out on customer success, and it's like, I think that, again, it's just
Yeah,
me.
shout
I
out to
think I
Nick
had this huge shout out, right? He's OG. He really
for
shaped the way
sure.
that we think
He's
about
a good
the
dude.
recurring revenue model, and so I
Yeah.
think, like, as a former, top of funnel leader, SDR leader, AE leader, sales leader, like, to me, it's always been about, like, close at all costs, right? And I think, like, what has really opened up my eyes is I used to think like CS, and that there's actually a lot of history in that. Right, CS actually started as, like, we know it as customer support, and then it evolved into customer success, right? But I think, like, again, speaking for myself, just us, like, arrogant top of funnel, like, always be closing, just that mentality of go get the whales and close them. I think our mentality is so, like, oh, that's below me. CS, that's just when we close a deal and just hand it over. But really, what I'm learning more and more is I just have an opportunity to just be quiet and learn from others. Is like, we're missing out on the value of SaaS if we really don't think about things holistically, right? Enter, Winning by Design's bow tie. Enter, thinking really about, I think about Jason Lemkin's podcast around, doing some studies around companies that are doing amazing in the net revenue retention, kind of like metric space, right? Think about Snowflake with the world-class 180%. I think there's a couple others that are kind of exceeding that, but name of the game in SaaS, as we all know, is like, high margin, and you get a propensity for them to see impact and drive, revenue. And so those are, like, concepts and terms. But the way that I really try to equip my team to think about this is this. I tell them, like, there was a time in history when somebody used to document things on a piece of paper and a pen, and they would do, like, let's say it was like a ledger of sorts, right? And they had to document every single transaction or just document everything, right? But there was a moment when somebody was like, hey, there's this thing called a computer, and there's this program called Excel. And going from paper and pen to Excel wildly shaped their success of how they operate. Like, how can we think like that for our clients in the way that we can really serve them? So I think I've really had, as I was talking about my journey, had this, like, great revelations too aggressive, but really a shift in perspective and broadening of my aperture of, insert, we've been talking about this last 18 months, right? With the economy and all that's happening with these crazy valuations, like, a lot of rifts happening. It's no longer about close at all costs. It's about efficiency. That's the TLDR, right? And so I think that in the vein of closing at all costs, we really want to think about, our growth levers and low hanging fruits, and, like, what better way to start as, our customers and ensuring that they are successful to be able to drive growth, right? So that's kind of where my mind goes as you kind of talk about that.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about the current state of execution and enablement. What's your perspective on it right now?
Yeah, when I think about the current state of, I'll just call it broadly sales execution or sales enablement, right? Again, just kind of foreshadowing what every kind of commentator's been talking about the last 18 months, like, economy, overvalued, companies, and they now need to kind of, like, recalibrate or rebalance how they operate and the way that they look at their P&L and the way they look forward and look at investments. And, what we see from an operator perspective is that a lot of these revenue orgs, again, this is not about tech and tools, it's really about process and efficiency, but, like, they're going from, like, 10 tools, right? From your sales execution to your LMS to your Vidyards to, like, your LinkedIn to, like, you might have had, just 10 tools, right? But now with tech consolidation is what we're seeing. They're going from 10 to 5. All the while, there's not a direct correlation to how their quotas being decreased, right? And so my commentary is less about the quota, but just the fact that, like, people need to figure out 1 + 1 = 5. They need to figure out irrational mathematics in some regard from how they were operating about 18 months ago. And so, with all that change, I think there's been 2 themes that I've been seeing from our clients and just peers in the space, right? It's one, an obsession over trying to cement changes at scale. That is a long tail strategy. So and then 2, it's actually winning the workflow. So 1, when I say cementing changes at scale, what I mean by that is I can, real easy one, right? People say my name, they're like, oh, how do you say that? And the first time I meet them, it's like, how do you say it? And I say, oh, my name is Guirae, right? And then you kind of reinforce it. And then in that moment, they won't forget it again because they don't want to be embarrassed or whatever, right? They might know it, right? That's a very simple vignette of like teaching someone something and enabling them and cementing a change of sorts, right? But then that's one person, right? And that's one little component of like a relationship to stretch that illustration. But how do you do that when you have an organization of 1,000 people? How do you do that when you have all these different tools, all these different processes, and a lot of these products that you need to take to market, right? So really what we're seeing is a lot of operators are really obsessing over like, how do we like take what, let's take a simple example. Hey, there is our number one sales rep. They're closing $1 million of ARR per quarter, right? That's what good looks like. How do we like look at what they're doing, really benchmark and understand their workflow? Like, what do you do to be successful? And then be able to like, I don't know, get everyone else to do it, right? Maybe in their own way, but you get the point, like really adopting that process. And not just do it once and go, hey, let me do a 1 hour like internal case study. Here's AE George, and he's amazing. And here's some of his pro tips and da, 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 da. If there's 100 reps on here, what we're seeing is that a lot of research is saying only about 15% of those people actually retain that information, right? That's a Gartner Forrester, metric over there, where they're like only 15% of the people in that hour-long session are going to retain it and then actually do something about it, right? And so how do we think about doing all those steps of like benchmarking what good looks like, standardizing, but then have a long-tailed strategy? Meaning, how do we ensure that we make change, reinforce that behavior of change with little nuggets and reinforcement and coaching and training and practice? We talk about Philadelphia, insert Allen Iverson quotes left and right. We're talking practice. Like,
I love AI, by the way. And I'm not talking ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly. I think probably gets over Googled these days, right? But and then doing that in a 12-month, 18-month time horizon where we can really see what's working and what's not, right? I think about Mark Roberge and just what he built with like the growth concept and Brian Balfour over there at Reforge, like, and just their idea of like rapid experimentation. I know that's more in the vein of like product and engineering plus marketing, but like, I'm really inspired by that concept of constant iteration. I even think about software engineering and how they go about their CI/CD pipelines of continuous improvement, continuous development. Point being, how do we take what a good rep does, document it, standardize it, roll it out, reinforce it, and do rapid experimentation in a way we learn from it. Mm-hmm. So we're noticing that is something people are latching onto, wanting to achieve it. Maybe not directly in those words, but that's one way that efficiency can take place without just trying to procure tools or just hiring top talent, which is still crucial. But let's make the most of what we have.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I was just actually talking about this on the show recently. I forgot exactly with who it was, but we were talking about how do you actually scale and these repeatable processes and really kind of onboard and continue to train reps to keep up not only with like workflows, but with the qualitative stuff that a top salesperson does. And I remember when I was a door-to-door salesperson, one of the things that we did was what we called follow. And actually, you can ask Jason this, because Jason Vargas, one of the co-founders of RevShoppe, just because that's actually where we met when we were both door-to-door salespeople back in college years ago, 2 decades ago. Time flies.
Time flies, baby.
But what we did was, in the beginning, when you first joined the organization, you literally shadowed another rep, a top performing rep within your territory. And you did that for days. And you picked up on their nuances, and you picked up on their energy, right? Because their energy was huge, right? Like that positive attitude. I mean, all top reps had that, right? There's really a correlation between, I think, not performing as well and having a low energy or low vibration or having a tough time, right? So, that was one of the things that we did. But then also when a rep was struggling,
Yeah.
instead of just like putting them on a PIP and then having a, let's say, a third party that's not out in the field, right? Try to retrain them or get them going again. What we would do is do the following again. It was like, all right, Sally, you're not, you're not doing great. Let's have you actually go out and follow, Sue. And that helped tremendously,
Yeah.
right? So that's, and not only was that something that helped with understanding their workflow, but again, that qualitative component.
Yeah.
I know it's a little difficult now, especially like we're behind screens and the nature
So
of our
hard.
business is a little different. But I think we as leaders have to think about how do we do that effectively. And it may be, flying a rep out to another rep's location, setting them up, or maybe doing some kind of group oriented thing that mimics that same experience.
Yeah, it's hard, man. I was catching up with one of my buddies who's a founder of a SaaS company, and basically, they were sharing with me that even for certain reps that are entering the workforce or even a couple of years in, like to work remotely versus like being in the office, it just makes such a drastic difference, right?
Absolutely.
And right now, I think this message of standardization, the reason why it's so compelling is because the hypothesis and the data around it makes sense. The blueprints make sense, yeah, but for us operators, right? But when we think about these, like, early in their career reps that are coming in, they're working remote and they're seeing all this great content on LinkedIn, but quite frankly, a bit distracting at times to like really ensure that you're aligned to your company's strategy. No one's really going to follow step by step what to do. You know what I mean? And listen, I'm not saying let's make everybody into robots and mimic them, but if I'm completely honest, like in SaaS as an operator, I do want a sense of like this is what we're doing and you got to do it because that's what good looks like, right? And let's work on it together, right? You kind of want them to do what you tell them to do in some regard, right? But my point there is less of a right or wrong, but it's definitely a challenge, right? Whether you're trying to standardize process or you allow for more autonomy, because there's definitely times where I'm like, hey, I've given you plenty of structure. Like I now need you to like challenge it and do what you need to do to get after it. So yeah, for sure. I resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah, and taking the what good looks like or what great looks like and making it your own, right? Like, well, like we know that you're not going to be 100% like the other person, and we don't want you to be that way. We wanted you to kind of create what great looks like for you, and you embody it, because I mean, there's nothing worse than like a salesperson sounding robotic, right? And not being able to connect and make it your own. I think it's kind of a fundamental philosophy for life in general, right? You need to be authentic in every relationship, especially within the context of what we're talking about here, the prospect seller relationship, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, let's talk a little bit about sales development. And, boy, I gotta say, the sales development space right now, and if you're an SDR there, I don't know. I have no clue how you're doing it. Like, is it still, I mean, I hate to ask this question, but I'm going to ask a kind of a bold question. Is it still working? I mean, listen, I get 100 SDR messages a day. And even if it is a well put together message that, looks like it just wasn't spam and they've done their research and all that sort of stuff, if I'm not in a position to purchase, and of course we're an early stage company right now, so we're not really buying anything right now. We're focused on other stuff. I'm just not even going to answer. And someone said it the other day. Who was it? I got it. It was Scott Leese. I think that's Scott Leese over at I know he does Thursday night sales and a bunch of other stuff, but he said something like this. He posted this on LinkedIn. Ironic, right? LinkedIn. But what he said was, hey, salespeople, it's not that your prospecting messages are not well put together. It's not that they're not personalized enough. It's literally that we have this cognitive overload as human beings right now, where we're inundated with notifications from 12 different channels, and we just can't actually process this anymore. So I think like that versus that we're not buying stuff versus maybe I'm not familiar with the brand or some other variables. It's got to be tough. So what's the current state? Like as an SDR, what do you have to do to get through? And I don't know that it's just social selling right now. Obviously that helps, right?
Yeah. So I'm actually gonna give a bit more of a different angle and perspective on this in terms of looking forward. I think like a lot of great people. I have my opinions too, but it's pretty flat, pretty standard around what you just said, right? There's not much more to it. That's the reality, right? But here's what I'm excited about to give a slightly different perspective. I think something that we're seeing in the vein of a lot of SDR orgs realizing like you got to be efficient, right? Or even AE teams, because come on, let's be real, like A's got a prospect too, right? And so when we got to be picking up the phone. And so I think what I'm seeing is teams placing emphasis on their customer upsell, cross-sell plays. So I've been seeing a bit more of an emphasis on the development of SDR teams going after clients for upsell, cross-sell. Right. And so some of you listening might be like, well, isn't that what a CSM and AM is for? Well, so for some companies that are that have multiple SKUs and a bit more upmarket, there's not enough bandwidth. I know plenty of companies that have like a 1 to like 20 model with the CSM for support and then tiered supporting and self-serve for efficiency. And I've been noticing more and more that a lot of a handful of SDR organizations are focusing on, cold calling, if you will, and really booking meetings for current clients that don't have a product, right? That don't have the other products. Like let's say you're a company that has 20 products and they only have 3. Well, there's 17 more things you could sell them, right? Especially for a big global enterprise. So my point there is that as we see that focus, we see a focus on efficiency. And what I also see is like SDRs now leveraging product usage, renewal timelines. Like this isn't like, these are these like data points and triggers, right, that they see, right? Product usage, or they went to a customer webinar event, or support tickets are up. Like these are all these data points in the post-sale experience. And what SDRs are doing now is based on, or I'll give you one more example, is also a lot of these companies, if they have like, 5, 6 products plus, there's usually kind of their own buyer journey of how they buy, right? So they're able to really time that and synchronize that buyer journey with that outreach, right? So I think my point is this: I'm excited to see what SDR teams are going to learn from that upsell, cross-sell prospecting experience, with the hope that it'll impact our net new efforts as well, right? So I'm eager to see that movement really take form or shape. I'm eager to see, I think not just from a rep and frontline manager level, but from an operator level. If again, I don't want to get on my soapbox. I quite frankly don't have too much to say about that right now. But the reality is this: I think a lot of the reason why we see a high volume of activities is because there's a very flat and binary number. Listen, I get it. I'm an operator. I'm coin operated. It's very simple. You got to hit this number in order to get what you want. Like it's that simple in business. I get that, right? But if we're trying to be efficient and to understand our unit of economics, I think there's got to be a bit more finesse, right? So if you just say, just do more, I think I was reading an article about one of the founders at Catalyst. It wasn't Kevin Chi, I think it was the other guy, but he basically was saying like, listen, like gone are the days of CRO 1.0, who's just maniacally obsessed on more activity equals more revenue. Enter CRO 2.0, who's leveraging technology, who's leveraging efficiency, is seeing the entire funnel. And I'm hoping that that'll impact the way that top of funnel teams and pre-sales, their goals are set and how they leverage, leads. So very practical example coming down from the abstract and the conceptual is event leads are so crucial. And, here's what typically happens. We go to an event, we get the lead, and we just go nurture. At its worst, it's like, hey, you're at my booth. Are you in market to buy? Right? At decent and quite frankly, the majority, it's nurture. Do you want to meet? But how do we really think about the event in the broader buyer journey and engage with them accordingly in the right time horizon in the similar principles as a SDR going upsell, cross-sell, reading product usage, understanding the buyer journey, right? So I'm not here to talk about descriptive or prescriptive things, right? Or sorry, not prescriptive things. I just want to call out that I think that we're going to learn something from how SDRs are going to be booking meetings efficiently based on data in the upsell cross-sell motion, which I think will begin to impact the way we think and reimagine and really recalibrate the way that we go top of funnel and quality over quantity, ultimately to not only hit out our team's revenue numbers, but again, ultimately the client seeing the value in the product so that they can make impact to their day-to-day.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things you talked about that I really love, just given the last couple of years that I've been digging into product-led growth from the, you know, category perspective, is this product usage piece, right?
Yes.
And, you know, how do you take that kind of thinking and apply it to other channels, other top of the funnel channels? You know, I know there are a lot of tools out there now that have popped up in that space. And I think it's really super interesting because not just like product usage, which would then sort of, you know, really kind of imply that you would have some sort of freemium or free trial or some, you know, some sort of method to be able to actually extract that product usage in you know, data or information, but also like these product tours that are not necessarily your actual product, but you're getting a sense for whether they're interacting with that, you know, that interface or that, you know, demo experience, and then, you know, taking that and then driving action and getting that intent information. So like applying that kind of stuff to, like you talked about, the event stuff, right? These other channels, I think that's really powerful for sure.
And I think how that happens to augment the SDR workflow, listen, I really think that AI is going to really push that forward, right? Because like you know, to me, the way, from my vantage point, the way that I look at AI right now is that it's very binary for me right now, right? In the sense of like, you know, you spend about X amount of percent of your day on administrative tasks, whether it's research, like everything I just said, right? Like, how do we understand like product usage and things of that nature, right? How do we understand what event they're at, 10Ks, like, you know, you spend X amount of your day, right? X percent of your day doing that. By leveraging AI and automation, I think that's just going to drop to like X minus, you know, 20, 30%, right? And then that 20, 30% can be used for creativity, can be used for making a cold call, like whatever it needs to be. But I really do think that some of the automation and the consolidating will really help. One quick side note, kind of related to this. I've always said this, and I'm not here to be like a futurist or I called it type of thing, but I've always said, I remember saying
you're a badass, all right? So
I appreciate you, man.
Be the futurist.
I remember in 2017, I was at Frontline Education, and it was my first time really being within like a RevOps organization. So I was the SDR leader, but was part of the RevOps organization, right? So super amazing opportunity, forever indebted to Kevin D. Michelle, who gave me my first opportunity in, you know, leadership. And really he, you know, I got really into Salesforce. I got really into Insight Squared and understanding data and forecasting. And something I said was this, I was like, man, one day, because I remember just like, obviously for all you reporting people out there, like oftentimes you just want to download the CSV and then mess around with it in Excel because we have better control and pivots and all this fancy stuff and VLOOKUPs. But the thing is, I always said, imagine a world where like Siri, I could go, hey, whatever. And I could go, show me, run a report for me that's based on revenue that shows me who are the top 3 regions that are producing the most amount of revenue for this product line. And then it pops it out. And here we are today with like ChatGPT and Bard. And I'm just like, I think we're getting really close, right? So practical application, like imagine a world where that something like that could happen, right? I could say, show me this based on a campaign, and here's a lead list. And then I could go, also procure me the cell phone numbers for these people or the emails based on our database, as well as external products. You know, what's interesting about that is I think that shapes the way that a lot of companies can go to market. So imagine if like a Zoom Info Uplead, I don't really care which flavor, but like, imagine if you could do that and go, okay, create a campaign for me with 100 leads and then append and like data sanitize and get me emails and contacts. There's a PLG model where you can now buy hundreds of those contacts, right? So without getting too ahead of myself, I think those
I
are
mean,
the
it
ways
sounds
that
pretty awesome.
efficiency, a lot of these efficiency gains, right? So for us, like it's like, how do we look at, you know, what we're doing today and how does AI supplement that, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
very much on the board of like, you know, it's not that it's going to replace reps. I think a lot of people have commentary. I don't want to go into that in this podcast, but like, bottom line is it's supplementing what you're doing. And all those menial tasks, it's being eliminated. And some examples that I just stated the last, you know, couple of minutes, I think that's how it's going to really make a difference, right? Something I always say to my consultants is like, I want you all not to get so caught up with configuring, you know, the technology for them. I want some of that to be freed up so that with the time you typically spend always configuring, I want you to dream about the client success. I want you to dream about, you know, not just how do we configure a sales execution tool so that you're more efficient, but I want you to understand, oh, wow, this VP, you know, is losing sleep over. And the reason why they pay for this is because they have a subpar stage 1 to stage 2 conversion rate.
Mm.
How do we configure things so that it maps to impacting that and not just configuring, right? So if we can free up a lot of our time, it's time and money, right? Time is money. And so I think if we can do that, there's going to be a lot of wins, right? So, yeah.
Brother, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today.
Yeah.
You know, especially I know you're super busy and you got a lot of success going on at RevShoppe. Shout out to the RevShoppe folks. So, you know, Jason, in particular, is
Yeah.
a really good friend, and Patricia,
Yep.
and so on. So, you know, really happy to see just all the success that you guys have had over the last several years, and it just feels good to see good people
Yeah.
who are hard workers really be successful. So shout out to you guys. If folks wanted to connect with you on social media or maybe learn more about RevShoppe, maybe you can take a quick second to kind of
Yeah,
just tell
sure.
us a little bit about RevShoppe.
Yeah, for sure. LinkedIn, you know, that's where you can reach me, connect with me, message me, DM me. Always open to a conversation around this. And yeah, RevShop, we just been it's been quite a journey. You know, I don't want to use all these. It might seem like buzzwords, but really what we mean is the way that people. Really, we started out as a company that's configuring, you know, your outreach and your sales off tools, right?
Mhm.
And I think what we've really evolved to is really shaping the way the go-to-market strategy and then like putting it into motion. So I think something that's been really top of mind for us is again, like one, how do we make all these little operational edits, right? For example, picklist values and automation and Salesforce plugins and speed to lead and governance and rule sets, like all these little operational things. What we've realized being experts in this is if you can have that, if you can have a strategy that says, I want to be efficient and map that strategy to the technology, what we're seeing is that that has revenue gains because ultimately you're freeing up that time to be able to do more prospecting and be able to be more efficient. And then second, you know, we're really obsessing over this idea of like operating models are centers of excellence, right? Again, like how do we scale content? Like it's one thing to create sequences, right? We need good copy, right? You know, something that hits your mailbox, that catches your attention. Hey, George, I noticed that you not only have a Heats hat in the podcast you did with Guirae, but also some awesome books and some statues on your second shelf. Like, whoa, you know, that's a bit too long, but you get the point. Good copy will go a long way. But to be able to do that consistently and
Mhm.
predictably is really tough. So I think that challenge really, the way that we've thought through it is how to create a center of excellence that is really owning the success criteria of some of that messaging, extract it globally, analyze it, pull out the best subject lines, the content, the length, the tone, all the things that go into messaging, and then really think hard and analyze and redistribute it globally, right? Think about it, think like, imagine with me a global map and Amazon's HQ and there's lines going globally to their warehouses. That's how we're thinking about global distribution of content at scale, like brand alignment, right? And true data of what works and what doesn't. And how often have operators listening to this, have you heard, you know, AEs going, hey, I've been using the sequence for like 3 quarters. Like, do we have anything new? Right.
Yep.
So those are some ways that we're thinking about really helping our clients be successful and really building a revenue engine. So yeah, appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of what we've been experiencing. It's been a blast. And thank you for having me on here. Always, like I said, we always create a little bit of magic. So appreciate your time.
Awesome, my brother. You gave me goosebumps here talking about this. Cool. Well, listen, have a wonderful, wonderful day.